Cook's Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you for making us Britain's #1 news channel. Together, we have built something truly extraordinary.
Good evening, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. On the M74 southbound, the Junction 6 off-slip to Hamilton is closed for essential roadworks. On the A55 at Britannia Bridge, there is a 30 miles per hour limit in both directions until further notice. In Durham, the A66 westbound between the A1M and the A67 is shut after a crash, with recovery due after midnight tonight. And on the trains, Cross Country and South Western Railway both report major disruption between Southampton Central and Brockenhurst, plus cross-country delays between York and Northallerton. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
This year, the adventure of a lifetime could be on us.
Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for two to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, New Zealand or even Sri Lanka. We'll also boost your bank account with a fabulous £30,000 in tax-free cash.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
A very, very good evening to you and welcome to Farage with me, your host tonight, Martin Daubney. Coming up on tonight's show.
Waspy women, U-turn. The two-child benefit cap, U-turn. Grooming gangs inquiry, U-turn. The family farms tax, U-turn.
Yes, and yet another, the latest backbench revolt. Labour MPs have today blasted Sir Keir Starmer's hugely controversial plans to put migrants in brand new taxpayer-funded council housing. So, could we be looking at yet another U-turn, the 15th from the Prime Minister, some are calling Captain U-turn. And meanwhile,
our welfare state is trapping people not just in poverty, but out of work.
Yes, on the day we discover the United Kingdom is now officially the sick man of the G7. A new investigation has revealed an additional £10 billion in hidden taxpayer-funded freebies, and that's on top of our already astronomical £100 billion universal annual credit bill. And in other news today, brand new analysis has revealed that local council spending on migrant social care is up an astonishing 165% over the last 5 years. Now, almost £750 million every single year, paid for by you, the great British taxpayer. And finally,
we don't just want to hear an apology, we want reparations.
Yes, as a new £730,000 Church of England diversity initiative is set to push anti-racism sermons. We'll be looking at whether the new Archbishop of Canterbury will be gullible enough to press ahead with reparations for slavery. That's all to come on tonight's action-packed show, but first, here's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and good evening to you. Just coming up to 2 minutes past 7. The top story: Peter Mandelson has now been reported to police amid fresh claims he gave Jeffrey Epstein advance notice of a €500 billion Eurozone bailout during the financial crisis. The SNP and Reform UK have referred the former cabinet minister to the Metropolitan Force following the release of millions of US Justice Department files. The documents appear to show Mandelson shared sensitive government information with Epstein while serving as a senior minister and received $75,000 in payments when he was a Labour MP. Sir Keir Starmer has said Mandelson should not remain in the House of Lords and has ordered an urgent review into all contact between the pair while Mandelson was in government. Lord Mandelson, though, denies any wrongdoing, saying he has no recollection of the payments and has resigned from the Labour Party to avoid what he calls further embarrassment. Well, earlier today, the Cabinet Minister Darren Jones told the Commons the revelations raise serious concerns about Mandelson's conduct in office.
Peter Mandelson must account for his actions and conduct. It is an understatement to say that his decision to continue a close relationship with a convicted paedophile, including discussing private government business, falls far below the standards expected of any minister. His behaviour was unequivocally wrong and an insult to the women and girls who suffered. No government minister of any political party should have, nor ever should, behave in this way.
The mother of Rhiannon White says the government must be held accountable for her daughter's death after her killer was jailed for life. Rhiannon was murdered at a train station in Walsall, stabbed 23 times with a screwdriver by Deng Majek, an asylum seeker. Majek has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 29 years. Speaking to GB News earlier today, Siobhan White said her family will now campaign in Rhiannon's name, supporting other families and pushing for stronger protections for women and girls. Just a warning, this next clip does contain some distressing details.
There was absolutely no reason at all. No reason. As you've seen from the CCTV links, he literally just watched her for hours. There was no reason. They'd never even crossed words. We have sat quiet for 15 months for Rhiannon's sake, because I wanted justice. We're not a family that are going to go and kick off. What's the point? Because Rhiannon's not the first case, and sadly she won't be the last. But we were handed a life sentence today. I had to watch my daughter die.
Well, the Home Office has released a statement in response saying this vile criminal is behind bars where he belongs and has rightly received the strictest punishment, a life sentence. It went on to say that the Home Office shares public anger over what it called a broken system, insisting it is taking action to keep dangerous offenders out of the country and to close all asylum hotels. The independent rape gang inquiry has formally opened today in London with 2 weeks of public hearings now underway. That inquiry has been crowdfunded by Great Yarmouth MP Rupert Lowe and is expected to hear evidence from survivors, campaigners, whistleblowers and from public figures. Supporters say the process is designed to give victims a platform outside government-led structures amid long-standing concerns over accountability and delays. It does come, though, as ministers are preparing a separate national inquiry chaired by Anne Longfield, which is due to run for 3 years with a budget of £65 million. And tonight it has been confirmed that resident doctors in England have voted to continue industrial action for another 6 months, keeping pressure on the government over pay and conditions. The British Medical Association says 93.4% of those who voted backed further strikes. But worth noting, turnout was just over 52%, meaning roughly a third of all resident doctors actively supported action. The government says doctors have already had a nearly 29% pay rise over 3 years and insists talks are ongoing, with Health Secretary Wes Streeting saying he wants to avoid any further disruption in 2026. Those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in an hour. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
Thank you, Sam. Now, welcome back to Farage. To be your host tonight, Martin Dordme. A whopping 1.3 million households in the United Kingdom are on social housing waiting lists. And yet, one of the latest latest illegal migration strategies, beg your pardon, involves a pilot scheme potentially worth hundreds of millions of pounds to fund local authorities building new housing for immigrants. However, a growing number of Labour backbenchers are putting pressure on the Prime Minister to reverse course on the scheme, prompting speculation that we're on the cusp of yet another U-turn from this government. In fact, it might be the 15th U-turn. We're delighted now to be joined by the leader of the Conservatives for Brighton and Hove City Council. That's one of the councils that registers its interest in this pilot scheme. And my guest, Alistair McNair. Alistair, welcome to the show. So here we are. There are 5 pilot areas in the country: Brighton and Hove, Hackney, Peterborough, Thanet, Powys in Wales. Want to sign up to the notion to give a free council house to people who came here illegally. It's completely and utterly bonkers.
Well, I mean, my wife's Ukrainian. My mother-in-law often lives with us as a refugee. I teach international students. But I think residents in Brighton and Hove have a right to question why Brighton and Hove City Council has signed up to this scheme. They can't manage their own social housing, which was heavily criticised in 2024. A lot of it's in poor state. So why does it take asylum seekers to have money invested in our city?
Well, it's a fair question. And the point is, it's not fair. Look at the nationwide picture, 1.3 million on waiting lists. That's a 3 percentile increase year on year. In Glasgow, it's over 100 years. Over 100 years for the chance to get a 3-bedroom family home. This sends out a clear message. And by the way, Labour backbench MPs are furious. Graham Stringer was in this very studio earlier on saying this is unacceptable. Jonathan Brash, Labour MP for Hartlepool, saying this is completely bonkers and will go down terribly in the Red Bull. I've got an idea for you. How about we send all of the people who want a social house to places like Brighton? You know, do a Martha's Vineyard style dump on areas like yours and let the local council deal with it. Then let's see how popular it is with the electorate.
Well, our city is, our council calls us a city of sanctuary. I'm sure, they might well be delighted with that. We are a very, very welcoming city, but, you know, we've got an 8,000 backlog, 8,000 long waiting list for social housing. And there's a repairs backlog. I've been in residents' homes with terrible damp and issues with their pipes and windows, all sorts of problems. And yet, they say that this will add to the social housing, our social housing in 10 years' time. But why? There's no guarantee, and also of that. And also, are these asylum seekers vetted? Who are these asylum seekers that might come here?
Well, we don't know. That's the point. There's absolutely no idea who they are. A lot of them throw their passports in the channel. And Alistair McNair, I put it to you, ideas like this simply tear apart and set fire to the social contracts in the United Kingdom. People that wake up in the morning, they go to work, they pay their stamp, they pay their taxes, they pay their dues. They're at the back of the queue.
Well, people will start to feel that way. And I think as someone like me who is pro-controlled immigration, it does send out the wrong message too. People will turn against immigration completely. They'll turn against genuine asylum seekers. Our council should be focusing on asking the government for extra money for the council housing that exists at the moment and helping its residents at the moment, and reducing the waiting lists of residents already on it, not encouraging asylum seekers to come here.
But the fact of the matter is, there seems to be let's face it, a woke mindset in places like Brighton. No, come all ye faithful, come across the channel, come to our constituency, but you can't cope down there.
Well, I mean, we are actually sending residents who are homeless or to other towns. I think Eastbourne has been complaining that we've been sending residents there and to New Haven. So we can't actually look after the residents we have at the moment. And, you know, I've met with residents who've had awful problems with the council in living in very poor conditions. The council can't cope with its housing stock at the moment, but it's asking for more, and for asylum seekers that there's no guarantee they'll be vetted or suitable to live in our town. And we are welcoming, and we should be welcoming, but people will soon not be.
I think you're absolutely right. Thank you for joining us. That's the leader of the Conservatives for Brighton and Hove City Council, and that is Alistair McNair. Thank you for your time. I'm joined in the studio. It's Monday nights by GBNews senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Nigel, my dad, Bob, spent the whole of Saturday on the phone trying to get an appointment on the phone with his local GP to get his prescription. He's 87, he needs medication urgently. He had to go down to the surgery in person to actually see a human. And isn't this the point? There's a feeling in Britain that British citizens are the back of the queue, and there's no surer way of underlining that than saying, come to Britain on a dinghy and you're the front of the queue. My dad said at the GP surgery, I'd be better off coming to this bloody country on a dinghy.
Well, he wouldn't. I mean, first of all, we've got to put what is happening in some kind of perspective. Firstly, no new council housing will be given to asylum seekers. That's an absolute commitment from the government. It would be illegal to do so anyway. So that's out. What we're talking about here is refurbishing derelict or empty property, and then you put migrants in that property. And as the council leader, councillor just said, that in 10 years' time that will come into the social housing stock. At the moment, these houses are not part of social housing stock, so they're not in a position at the moment to actually help people who are homeless. And the other point is, if you don't do something like this, where do you put people? No one wants them in hotels.
Containment centres. Tents.
Well,
prisons.
I don't think tents, especially with the weather as it is at the moment,
well,
actually
they're in tents in Calais.
Prisons are full, so that doesn't work.
Build the Nightingale-style centre. They did it during COVID.
Yeah, but the Nightingale hospitals weren't actually used during COVID.
Well, repurpose them now for asylum seekers.
Well, but at the moment we're trying to repurpose military barracks for asylum seekers, and look what's happening in Crowborough. Everyone's objecting to having them on their door.
Contained. They're wandering around their town.
They're not contained because they're not criminals. So
some people might argue they are breaking into the country illegally.
Well, they're not. Well, they're not. Not while they're claiming asylum. It may well be they'll be prosecuted at the end for coming in without a passport if their asylum claims fail. But while they're asylum seekers, they are not actually breaking any laws. And if they were ever charged with coming in without a passport, there'd be no prosecution. It just couldn't work.
But it's also managed. You're like going, oh, it's not a new council house. It's just a refurbished, amazing new tenants. You know, people don't fall for this anymore. It might be a brand new build, but in often cases in this situation, it's brand new builds built privately that are being bought by councils and given to asylum seekers. It's semantics. They're still getting to the front of a housing queue when we clearly have 1.3 million Brits at the back of the queue.
But then we're back to the problem of where actually do you put them while those asylum claims are going through. If the asylum claims fail, they will be removed from the country, and rightly so. But in the meantime, you've got to do something with them. And as far as I can see, every single idea that comes up is rejected by local people who don't want them on their doorstep. Yeah. I understand that. But, I mean, they don't want them on their doorstep, but it means that we're doing a lot of hand-wringing without coming up with solutions.
I've had two Labour Party MPs in this studio today, both of whom said if this government doesn't sort this out, it will sink them as it sunk the Conservatives. How many backbench MPs are out there, Labour Party MP now, who know they're heading for the dole queue? This is going to sink Britain, it's going to sink the Labour Party and sink their careers. People are sick of it.
Which is why they're trying to do something about it. So now to get any kind of settlement status in this country, you're going to have to wait not 5 years, but 15, 20, or in some cases even 30 years before you're getting that.
At the taxpayers' expense.
No, not at the taxpayers' expense. That the part of the proposals include anyone with indefinite leave to remain will have no recourse to public funds, i.e. no benefits. So there's a whole raft of measures coming in to try and discourage people. Well, I mean, this is what it is at consultation at the moment. There are problems with it, trying to sort out some of the detail, but that is out to consultation with the idea of discouraging people from trying to settle here.
Well, hasn't worked so far. The boats keep on coming, and I suspect this is going to get much worse. Nigel Farage, great start to the show. Now, government spokesperson has told GB News this is not government policy, and new council housing will not be used by asylum seekers under any circumstances. Now, this government will close every asylum hotel, and work is well underway with military sites brought forward to ease pressure on communities and cut asylum costs. Now, thank you to my guests. Thank you to Nigel. Coming up in a moment's time.
Our welfare state is trapping people not just in poverty, but out of work.
Yes, on the day we discover the UK is not now just officially the sick man of Europe, but the sick man of the G7. New investigations revealed 10 billion quid's worth of hidden taxpayer-funded freebies, and that's on top of our £100 billion per year universal credit bill, paid for by you, the great British taxpayer. That's next.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Yeah, that tea party taking place a little bit later on today. But before all of that, we are here on Pooh Bridge for an extra special game of Pooh Sticks. I've got some sticks here from the 100-acre wood that we're going to be using. There's a whole host of people here who have wanted to play Pooh Sticks with me. Lily and Anya have also been collecting sticks today. They're a big fan of Winnie the Pooh. Anya, what's Lily's favourite character?
It is Winnie the Pooh.
And what is it about Winnie the Pooh that's so popular, not only from people like you growing up, but also Lily now?
Well, we love all the stories and how there's a message from each of the stories as well. We read them every night. And what do you love about Winnie the Pooh as well? Honey, don't you? The little honey pots.
Amazing. Well, you get your sticks ready. We've also got a running group who have come here especially today to mark 100 years of Winnie the Pooh from Haywards Heath. They have all come prepared with their sticks. Some have even brought sticks from home. Sticks are at the ready. You've brought your sticks from home. What's your technique?
Well, mine are actually probably quite wet, which I've heard is not a good thing. I think they need to be a bit drier.
In 3, 2, 1, go. Right, the sticks are in the water, but who is going to win here at Pooh Sticks Bridge? Oh, it wasn't me. There's the first stick to come through. Whose was that? Becky, you are the winner. Congratulations of Pooh Sticks on Pooh Sticks Bridge. But this is just the first round. They've got a whole clipboard here. There's 30 of them come for a whole tournament here today to play Pooh Sticks on what is Winnie the Pooh Day, marking 100 years since Winnie the Pooh was first published back in Christmas Eve of 1925. And this, of course, Winnie the Pooh Day being marked today on the birthday of A.A. Milne.
GB News, the People's Channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Farage. With me tonight, your host, Martin Dorby. Now, it's official. Britain is no longer the sick man of Europe, but the sick man of the entire G7. Yes, on current trends, we are set to spend 2.2% of our GDP on incapacity and disability welfare PIP payments by the end of the decade, by 2030. And just to put this into perspective, our entire welfare bill is now above £300 billion. 300 billion. Every single year. Now, that's higher than the GDP of New Zealand, the GDP of Kazakhstan, Finland, Algeria, and, of course, the Islamic Republic of Iran, to be inclusive, a country of nearly 100 million people. And today, a new investigation has also revealed that an extra £10 billion in hidden benefits has been paid to universal credit families, and that's on top of the already astronomical £100 billion universal credit bill paid for by you, the great British taxpayer. It's a complete and utter unsustainable mess, and to discuss it, I'm joined now by the former director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, Paul Johnson. Paul, thank you for joining us. To have a guest of your stature is superb. We can't carry on with this. It's an unsustainable mess. If we don't get on top of it, it's going to bankrupt the entire country.
Well, we're certainly paying an increasing amount on disability and health benefits, and that spending on that has gone up at an astonishing state over the last few years, and is expected to continue to go up by at least 1 percentage point of national income. That doesn't sound like very much. That's £30 billion. That is 1% of national income in addition to what we were spending just on these health-related benefits. That is ludicrous. It's not, it seems, related to any objective measure of health. And as you said, most other countries, in fact, all other countries, are not experiencing that. So it's not just COVID, because other countries had COVID, and that's not happening there. It is worth saying, though, that the rest of the benefits bill isn't going up. This really is very much a problem that's focused on the health and disability benefits. And it's worth saying, just for your viewers, when you quoted that 300 billion number, that does include the state pension and pensioner benefits. That's not just the working age part of the population that is included in that 300 billion number.
But of course, Paul, pensioners will probably quite rightly say they paid their stamp, they paid their dues, they paid in. This is often fueled by people who've paid in very, very little. And look at that chart on the screen there. It's an embarrassment. We dwarf, most other major economies in the G7. Canada, 0.6. Japan, 0.7. USA, 0.8% GDP. We're way, way, way out in front on 2.2%. And we're faced with a political dichotomy. We all know this is bankrupt in the country, but we have a Labour Party that can't cut the benefits bill because their backbenchers won't allow it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the Labour government did have some proposals about a year ago to reduce spending on these benefits, essentially by tightening up the criteria for the disability benefits, the personal independence payment, PIP, to make it harder to get at all, and also actually reducing significantly the generosity of the health-related bit of universal credit. In particular, the changes to personal independence payment were just binned altogether. And what's rather surprising is that they now have a review of that system, but the constraint on that review is not to try and save any money. It's simply to ensure that spending doesn't go up any more quickly than is currently expected. So if you take all of these benefits together, the health-related benefits, and look across the age distribution from children through to pensioners, we're actually expecting that bill to reach 100 billion a year by itself by the end of this decade.
Paul Johnson, when you add into that another report out today showing that the additional passport of payments, this is free prescriptions, dentistry, travel, school meals, help with energy, water, even help with your broadband, free broadband, this is simply unsustainable. It has all the hallmarks of a nation committing economic suicide.
Well, I'm not sure I'd quite go that far. As I say, it's important to keep in perspective that some of our non-health related benefit spending is lower than other countries, and it really isn't rising over time. And we certainly spend a lot less on pensioner benefits than many other European countries, at least. So one wants to be a bit careful with the language here. That said, what you're describing about the passporting onto these other kinds of benefits is a problem in itself, because it means even with the very careful design often of the way that benefits are put together, when you put these things on top, it can then become very expensive to leave the benefits, whether that's moving off universal credit, moving into work, or moving off these health-related benefits, because other things become layered on top, so that you can, under those circumstances, suffer some considerable financial penalty if you come off the benefit.
OK, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate your opinion as a former director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, the IFS. Paul Johnson, thanks for your company. Nigel Nelson, get a reaction to you. I'm going to repeat my point. I think this is the hallmark of a nation committing economic suicide. It's unsustainable.
Well, hang on a sec. I mean, I think Paul was very fair there, and the point that he was making is that non-pensioner benefits are no higher as a proportion of GDP than they were in 2015, and in many cases are actually lower than they were before the financial crash in 2008. So it's a myth that benefits are suddenly shooting up. Pensions certainly have, but when it comes down to things like housing benefit, cash work-related benefits, child tax credits, all those have come down in that time. And at the moment, we still pay less on welfare than France, Italy, and Germany. Yeah. So what you're talking about here is a projection.
Look at the state of their economies. My point is this: the report today by Onward Recovered, it exposed that even like warm home discounts, cold weather payments, water social tariffs, broadband social tariffs, these fringe benefits, and free access to things like the Tower of London.
Water's pretty important, and so's heat.
Go to work and pay for it.
Well, this is exactly what people are trying to do, and the whole point of the benefit system is to make sure that you get more money in work than you do on benefits.
You don't think people are milking this?
No, I don't. I think a lot of people...
You don't think anyone's milking the benefit system?
Well, I'm not saying that nobody is milking the benefit system. I'm sure there are people who just don't want to work and are quite happy to live off benefits.
Because it pays better to sit on your backside.
No, it doesn't pay better. At the moment that work will pay better. When it comes down to disability benefits, where the government made a mistake last year...
Mental health, I'm stressed today...
...was to try and use a money-saving device to get £5 billion off disability benefits and dressing it up as welfare reform. It wasn't welfare reform, it was money-saving. MPs then objected to that. Sir Stephen Timms is now doing a review to try and sort that out. So this projection of 2.2% that you're talking about may not happen.
OK. Thank you very much, Nigel. I've got some breaking news for you now just coming in. It's this. Earlier on this evening, Reform UK and the SNP, they reported Lord Peter Mandelson to the Metropolitan Police after the US Justice Department's file release suggested that he forwarded internal government information to Jeffrey Epstein. Well, moments ago, the Ella Marriott, the commander of the Metropolitan Police, issued the following statement. We are aware of the further release of millions of court documents in relation to the Jeffrey Epstein by the United States Department of Justice. And following this release and subsequent media reporting, the Met has received a number of reports relating to alleged misconduct in a public office. The reports will all be reviewed to determine if they meet the criminal threshold for investigation. They continue, as with any matter, if new and relevant information is brought to our attention, we will assess it and investigate as appropriate. It's worth adding here that Lord Mandelson denies any wrongdoing and has resigned from the Labour Party to avoid what he calls any further embarrassment. Thank you to you, Nigel. And coming up next, brand new analysis has revealed that local council spending on migrant social care is up an astonishing 165% over the last 5 years. It's almost £750 million every single year. Paid for by you, the great British taxpayer. That's next.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The current unsettled weather is extending to many other areas of Europe as well, particularly parts of Portugal and southern Spain, seeing some very persistent rain at the moment, some localised flooding around here. Showers that are pushing across the continent are also bringing mountain snow over the Alps, but whilst eastern areas of the Mediterranean get a brief respite on Tuesday, we are expecting further thunderstorms and heavy showers to move through here later on in the week, so still rather wet for many.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Rain is returning to southwest England and more wet weather to come across the northeast as well, with some snow mixed in here. Most places feeling a bit colder tomorrow compared to today. Low pressure systems continue to grow down to the southwest, being blocked from moving by a big area of high pressure. So the weather's kind of stuck in this rut. A further pulse of rain coming into the southwest, where the ground is very, very wet. So extra rain is likely to cause some flooding problems, even though it's not particularly heavy. Staying wet in northeast Scotland as well, and the snow level coming down here. Most places avoiding frost with a lot of cloud and a fairly brisk wind, which will bring a real chill tomorrow. As the air gets colder, that snow coming down to lower levels over eastern Scotland, maybe rain on the coast, but you won't have to come too far to see some snow. The rain easing perhaps in Cornwall, but more wet weather to come for Dorset, Somerset and Devon. Met Office warning remains in place here. That rain extending across Wales, but Northern Ireland, much of Northern England's dry and drab. Some brightness in western Scotland, but the snow warning in place across the northeast. To say that snow coming down increasingly to lower and lower levels. So we may see rain on the coast, but the snow elsewhere could cause some disruption as it builds up through the day, particularly, but not exclusively, on the higher routes. The rain will edge northwards, covering the Midlands, East Anglia by the time we get into the afternoon, and most of Wales. Cold day with that rain over the Midlands and East Anglia, 4 or 5 degrees with that wind continuing to feed in the cloud. And as things turn colder, the wet weather moves northwards. We'll see a bit more snow on Wednesday. Again, mostly over the hills, but some at lower levels possible for a time over northern England and Scotland. Warning in place for Shetland through Wednesday as well. Elsewhere further south, looks a bit brighter across southern parts of England and Wales on Wednesday, and a bit milder here as well, but further north, staying on the chilly side throughout.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Dorby. Now, brand new analysis out today from over the weekend has laid bare the disastrous management of migrant costs in local authorities. Yes, the Taxpayers Alliance research has revealed the cost of migrant social care has soared by an astonishing 165% in the past 5 years, totalling £133 million. Now, incredibly, there's much, much more. When you account for children, the amount is an astonishing £744 million. That's right, almost £750 million per year, paid for by you, the great British taxpayer. I'm joined now in the studio by the media campaigns manager at Taxpayers Alliance, William Yarwood, as well, of course, as GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. William, welcome to the show. I covered this story on my show earlier. The reaction has been incredible. It's simply mind-blowing to figure out £750 million per year. That is 1.5 times the inheritance tax grab on farmers is being spent just on the social care for asylum seekers in Britain.
Yeah, it's completely crazy, Martin. And we have been framing this all day as basically a shadow social care system that's occurring in local authorities, because we all know about the costs of hotels. We all know about the freebies that local councils give to illegal migrants. But actually, we don't know the fact that they actually have access to social care. And like you said, yes, it's been a 165% increase just on adult social care alone, but you add into children into that, and then we get up to the eye-watering £750 million figure, meaning that actually public funds paid for by local council taxpayers is being taken away from potholes, bins, the works, and funneled into this system. And many people who I've talked to today who've been outraged by the story, just as many of you have been saying, you know, what's the point of me paying council tax if it's not going towards the things that I care about and going towards people who actually shouldn't be in the country in the first place?
You know, I was driving across Nottinghamshire at the weekend, and the potholes, the roads are disastrous. It's almost shaking your teeth out. Don't get free dentistry, unlike the people here, perhaps.
Yeah.
And isn't this the point? People are seeing their communities crumble before their eyes. They can't get a GP appointment. And when there's the thick end of £750 million in just the social care, it breaks the social contract.
Absolutely, Martin. One thing I will say, though, is I don't believe, and it's actually a fact, that this is actually not local councils' fault, because this is a statutory obligation put upon them by Westminster. So they are absorbing the shocks, the financial shocks of the failure to control the small boats crisis, or actually not just control it, deal with it in full. And quite honestly, Martin, these figures are just for 2024-25. Imagine if the small boats crisis gets worse and worse and worse. What's this figure going to be in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time? I might be coming back on your show in a few years' time and saying, actually, it's over 2 billion, 3 billion, you don't even know. But the problem is, Martin, is that unless Westminster and the politicians deal with the small boats crisis, this figure is going to go up, all to the detriment of local council taxpayers and actually their communities as a whole.
I think if it gets to that point, I think actually a lot of people watching this show might find themselves coming back to Britain on a dinghy. they might have a chance
absolutely.
of getting a free handout. Thank you, William. Stick with us. Nigel Nelson, look, this is the same as the last story, really. It's simply breaking the social contract. People get out of bed in the morning. What's the point? Worst offenders, Kent, Hampshire, Manchester. I had the Reform Council leader from Kent on, Lyndon Karen earlier on, and I said, well, your Reform, what's going on here? She said, as you said, this is being foisted upon them by central government. They're being told to spend this money. They've got no say. Central government. That's where the buck stops.
Yeah, but it is, as William has just said, it is a statutory duty to look after these people. And you mentioned Kent. Kent's got the highest costs. I live in Kent. We're in the front line of the boats coming across the channel. And what do you do with unaccompanied children? You've got a child in front of you. I mean, Kent has the highest number of unaccompanied children that they've got to try and put up in care homes because there's nowhere else for them. But what else do you do with them? Where else are you going to put them?
Well, the same as before, prison centres.
Well, and we're back to the same argument. Yes, they haven't actually done anything wrong. And they're children. You don't start sticking children in jail.
Bearded children. 6 foot tall children. Well, how do we know they're children? They throw their passports in the channel. OK, well, if somebody's about that high and comes in and looks about 10 years old, they probably are. What about they've got hairy legs and they're going bald? Well, as some children have been proven to be.
Then it is the job of Border Force when they're investigating them to decide whether they are children. But if you're talking about real children, surely we've got to have some compassion and handle them properly. What Kent wants to do is try and shift some of them out to other local authorities.
Yeah, Brighton.
Who, surprise, surprise, don't want them.
Yeah. Let's send them, people might argue, to all the woke areas that vote for refugees welcome. Let's go fill Martha's Vineyard. Go fill Trump. On a serious point, William Yolwell, that's why I return to you now. This is unsustainable. Yeah. If this carries on, people are going to look at their alarm clocks in the morning and think, what's the point? Yeah. What's the point getting out of bed and shoveling all my tax into this?
Yeah, and then they wonder why their potholes aren't filled, why their bins aren't collected, why their areas have more graffiti, while beautification projects that councils actually used to spend a decent amount of their money on are just being drained of their funds. And again, my view on this, Martin, is really, really simple. You want to deal with social care spending for asylum seekers and legal migrants at the local level, you need to get Westminster serious about the legal migrant boat crisis, stop the boats, detain and deport. That is the simple answer to this.
William Yolwell, I fear this won't be the last time we have this conversation. I do hope, though, that it won't end up costing £2 billion. William Yold, superb as ever. Nigel Farage, excellent. Now, we've had a comment from the government. They told us this. We don't recognise these figures. How many times have we heard that? We don't recognise these figures. This government has reduced asylum support costs by nearly £1 billion since the general election. Now, the government is overhauling the broken funding system that we inherited and has made almost £78 billion available to councils next year so that the most deprived communities benefit. Well, thank you to William and thank you to Nigel. Now, coming up in just a moment's time.
We don't just want to hear an apology, we want reparation.
We want reparations. Well, as a new £730 million Church of England diversity initiative is set to push anti-racism sermons, we'll be looking at whether the new Archbishop of Canterbury will be gullible enough to press ahead with slavery reparations in the future. And while we're at it, what about reparations to the white working classes? We paid all the bills. That's next.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
Needs to stop. You think we can allow?
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back to Farage with me, Martin Dorby. Now it's the latest row pertaining to the extent to which woke ideology has infected the Church of England as the Diocese of London secures £730,000 in funding for a new diversity initiative that will encourage clergy to incorporate anti-racism themes into their sermons. Well, of course it does. But all of this comes as the new Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Mullally, has confirmed last week, having backed the Church's controversial plan to spend £100 million on slavery reparations for its supposed historical links to the slavery trade. As my next guest has pointed out, where does all of this nonsense end? Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis. Sir Michael, it's a pleasure to have your company. Where do we stop with slavery reparations? How far do we go back?
Well, Martin, this is the height of absurdity, even by the standards, I'm afraid, of the Church of England. The reality is that to say that £100 million of money that should be going to parishioners should be diverted to pay for slavery reparations is an historical nonsense. Where does it stop, to make your point? Look, how far do we want to go on this? 800 Catholic monasteries were destroyed in the reformation of the monasteries in the 1530s. Are we to compensate Catholics for that? The Jews were expelled from England in 1290 for 360 years until Oliver Cromwell let them back in. Are we to compensate for that? Meanwhile, Martin, the reality is that Britain, this country, led the way in rejecting slavery earlier than almost any other country on earth. So when it comes to compensation, it's an outrage to say that money should be diverted from parish churches that need it to fix a leaking roof or a broken organ in order to make reparations for something that happened hundreds of years ago, especially when we bear in mind, Martin, that, quite frankly, this country in 1807 was one of the first to actually make slavery illegal, and we spent thousands of lives with the Royal Navy fighting the slave trade throughout much of the 19th century.
So, Michael, when you look back at the great battles of attrition, the existential crises that the Church has faced, it survived the Reformation. It survived the English Civil War. Will it really die because of woke?
Well, I mean, they are in danger of woking themselves to death, really, because obviously their parish numbers have gone in an ever-decreasing cycle. They're totally out of touch, I think, with most of their parishioners. What we have here is an absurdity. In a famous legal case in England in 1772, an English judge said that slavery was abhorrent. That was pretty much before anyone in the world. We abolished it in 1807. We paid a huge bill in compensation for it throughout much of the last 100 years. It's unfair and unjust that current living parishioners of the Church of England are going to be deprived of the money that they should have to pay for this. Most countries are saying, just rejecting this outright. But of course, in this country, we find ourselves seriously contemplating paying £100 million for slavery reparations.
So, Michael, I'd like to make a point about who paid the bill. British taxpayers paid the bill for hundreds of years. Until 2015 it was still being paid. People like my dad, 47 years down the pit, never benefited at all in any scintilla of proof from slavery. A tiny percentile of people benefited from slavery, but the working class of Britain paid the tab off. How about they get reparations?
Well, you're right, Martin, and in fact it's even worse than that, because if you want to go back far enough, some 2,000 Royal Navy lives in the West Africa Squadron were lost. British lives were lost in fighting the slave trade. British ships, treasure was expended. So you're right that there are fairnesses across the board here. Where does this stop? Do we go all the way back? If we can go back 200 years, we go back 500 years to the Catholic monasteries being taken over and the dissolution. It would never cease.
Yeah, we can't go too far back because, of course, I was one of the original Normans who invaded. Let's leave it there. Thank you very much, Sir Michael Ellis, former Attorney General. Fascinating piece. Fascinating in the Telegraph today. Well done, always a pleasure. Nigel Farage joins me, of course, and Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Hove's interview like a vision as usual. Let's put it to you, Nigel Nelson. What about this idea that this bill has been paid off by the graft, the labour, the endeavour of the working classes? They never get thanks. They just get called racist.
Yeah, no, I mean, when it comes down to who should get any kind of compensation, I would agree with you there, and we'll turn you into a socialist yet, if we're lucky. I mean, bear in mind that £20 million that was paid out in compensation back in 1833 didn't go to the slaves, it went to the slavers. And in fairness, you have had people trying to give some of it back. Laura Trevelyan, the ex-BBC journalist, her family made a lot of money out of slavery. She's given £100,000 to Grenada. The family of William Gladstone, the former Prime Minister, his family made a huge amount of money out of it, hugely compensated, worth millions today, and they've given £100,000 to Guyana. So people are trying to do things. I think as a rule of thumb, compensation should only be paid to victims and their closest relatives within living memory. And that's why I think we're out of time to even think about compensation for slavery. And what the Caribbean countries are demanding, £18 trillion, is just ridiculous.
So, Jacob Rees-Mogg, of course, you're an ardent Christian yourself. This seems to be the ultimate hair shirt. They just can't seem to shake off.
The brilliant Sir Michael has convinced me that this is a brilliant idea because Holy Mother Church can have back all the monastic lands, and where we are sitting should go back to Westminster Abbey. I think the monks at Ampleforth still have a titular abbot of Westminster. He would be in charge. The wealth, unfortunately where I live in London, would I think also go back to the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church would own about 20% of England, I think, possibly more, if we went back to pre-Reformation days, that terrible theft of land from us papists. So Michael's right. We can't just stop 200 years ago. We've got to go back 500 years. Holy Mother Church must have her lands back with all the property it's now got on. It's fantastic. It's a really exciting idea. But it is, of course, also completely and utterly balmy. And that's the problem with what the Church of England is doing.
But they seem to be in this death spiral of self-flagellation, of guilt, of this existential crisis. What about repairing roofs? What about appealing to a new flock?
What worries me is the Church of England no longer seems to believe in anything, and therefore it goes along with every latest idea that is brought along. I wish the Church of England well. I believe Christianity has such an important place in our country, even today, both for our history and for the culture that we want to enjoy. But the Anglican Church seems to be abdicating that just to wokery and liberalism and not standing up for faith, for belief, for the Gospels. When do we ever hear them talk about God rather than reparations?
Well, of course, the Jacob Rees-Mogg State of the Nation is your attempt to offer salvation to the nation. What's on your menu tonight?
Well, I have to talk about Lord Mandelson of Foy in the county of Herefordshire. All that's been going on today, and I shall reveal to my distinguished audience, I was once walking home from the House of Commons and a car went past, wound down the window and called out, "Mr. Mandelson, you've ruined the country," at me. And I think this chap is likely to be a GBNews viewer, so if he's watching, I didn't mind at all. I thought it was quite funny that I should be mistaken for the Prince of Darkness. But Mandelson's behaviour is so sleazy. It affects Starmer, it affects Blair, it affects the whole New Labour project, because he was the principal architect of it, and it's really damaging to the left in this country.
Do you think that Mandelson belongs in prison?
Well, that's not a matter for me. I mean, going for that is going a further stage, but I am really concerned that he seemed to take money from Epstein and gave him what could potentially be information that had a financial benefit.
OK, and what else do you have on your menu? You've got a quick 45 seconds left.
Oh, goodness. Well, we're going to be talking about lots of other things as the time goes on. We can talk about the government fiddling and this classic Mandelson spin, the NHS figures. So they're saying that the waiting list is going down. No, it's not. They found out that the people they were going to operate on no longer need operations or dead or whatever it is. And so they spend millions clearing up the lists and say they've reduced the lists, but they haven't. They've just got rid of imaginary appointments. It's spin of New Labour kind. It's all the same as Mandelson. It's just that dishonesty with the British people.
Magnificent of Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg is up next, called State of the Nation. Nigel Nelson, superb as ever. Look forward to sparring with you all day on the show on Wednesday. I'll be back tomorrow, 3 till 6 p.m. Stay tuned next, State of the Nation with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. Have a fantastic evening, and I'll see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. First, though, here's your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Rain is returning to southwest England and more wet weather to come across the northeast as well, with some snow mixed in here. Most places feeling a bit colder tomorrow compared to today. Low pressure systems continue to grow down to the southwest, being blocked from moving by a big area of high pressure. So the weather's kind of stuck in this rut. A further pulse of rain coming into the southwest, where the ground is very, very wet. So extra rain is likely to cause some flooding problems, even though it's not particularly heavy. Staying wet in northeast Scotland as well, and the snow level coming down here. Most places avoiding frost with a lot of cloud and a fairly brisk wind, which will bring a real chill tomorrow. As the air gets colder, that snow coming down to lower levels over eastern Scotland, maybe rain on the coast, but you won't have to come too far to see some snow. The rain easing perhaps in Cornwall, but more wet weather to come for Dorset, Somerset and Devon. Met Office warning remains in place here. That rain extending across Wales, but Northern Ireland, much of Northern England's dry and drab. Some brightness in western Scotland, but the snow warning in place across the northeast. To say that snow coming down increasingly to lower and lower levels. So we may see rain on the coast, but the snow elsewhere could cause some disruption as it builds up through the day, particularly, but not exclusively, on the higher routes. The rain will edge northwards, covering the Midlands, East Anglia by the time we get into the afternoon, and most of Wales. Cold day with that rain over the Midlands and East Anglia, 4 or 5 degrees with that wind continuing to feed in the cloud. And as things turn colder, the wet weather moves northwards. We'll see a bit more snow on Wednesday. Again, mostly over the hills, but some at lower levels possible for a time over northern England and Scotland. Warning in place for Shetland through Wednesday as well. Elsewhere further south, looks a bit brighter across southern parts of England and Wales on Wednesday, and a bit milder here as well, but further north, staying on the chilly side throughout.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
We want you to set off on the destination of your dreams this year, as you could win an incredible holiday for two worth £10,000. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, you'll get to choose from 47 tours in over 30 worldwide destinations. We'll also give you £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure you really make a splash this summer.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Bowl.
They are under no illusion.
Ray.
Are you a human trafficker?
Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now is they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
The Prime Minister believes, as does the government, that Peter Mandelson should not retain his membership of the House of Lords or use his title.
Lord Mandelson, one of the main architects of New Labour and the man who can seemingly survive any scandal, has resigned from the Labour Party after the Epstein files revealed he received over £50,000 from the disgraced paedophile. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister teases a return to the front bench for Angela Rayner, despite her tax affairs not being cleared up. Are these scandals the culmination of the rot behind New Labour's obsession with PR over substance? Also tonight.
In our NHS, hospital waiting lists have fallen.
It's been revealed that in a drive to save the NHS, ministers are paying hospitals £3 million a month to remove patients from waiting lists to appear as if the lists are shrinking. A fortnight ago, the Prime Minister claimed waiting lists were down by more than 86,000, but do today's revelations show that Mandelson's New Labour-style spin is still the order of the day. Plus,
the welfare system fit for the future, and the current model doesn't work. We need to reform it, and that's what we will do.
Britain is becoming the sick man of the G7, this time on benefits. New data show the UK is set to spend 2.2% of GDP on incapacity welfare by 2030. Is it time the Prime Minister dealt with Britain's welfare culture before the nation is bankrupted by its benefits bill? And
this is the greatest moment in the modern history of our great nation. Thank you!
The Brexit benefits continue to flood in as new analysis by GBNews reveals Britain has avoided more than 60,000 pages, 112 miles of EU regulations in the 6 years since we left the bloc. Plus, Spain has decreed that it will give 500,000 illegal migrants citizenship, which, were we still in the EU, would give them unfettered rights to live and claim benefits in Britain. Thank goodness for Brexit. State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most penetratingly percipient panel, the former Conservative MP and Minister, Sir John Redwood, and the former Labour MP, Stephen Pound. As always, let me know what you think. Mailmog at GB News. But now, it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with the serendipitous Sam Francis.
Serendipitous, that's one I can do. You're going easy on me on a Monday. Anyway, police are reviewing reports of alleged misconduct tonight in public office after Peter Mandelson was accused of sharing sensitive information with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. The former UK ambassador to the United States features repeatedly in millions of documents released by the United States Department of Justice, all as part of the so-called Epstein files. The Metropolitan Police says it is now reviewing multiple reports following those releases and is assessing whether they meet the criminal threshold for investigation. Those files also appear to show Mandelson received $75,000 in payments while he was a Labour MP. In response, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said Mandelson should not remain in the House of Lords and has ordered an urgent review into all contact between the pair while Mandelson was in government. Lord Mandelson, though, denies wrongdoing, saying he has no recollection of the payments and has resigned from the Labour Party to avoid what he called further embarrassment. Well, earlier today, the Cabinet Minister Darren Jones told the Commons the revelations raise serious concerns about Mandelson's conduct in office.
Peter Mandelson must account for his actions and conduct. It is an understatement to say that his decision to continue a close relationship with a convicted paedophile, including discussing private government business, falls far below the standards expected of any minister. His behaviour was unequivocally wrong and an insult to the women and girls who suffered. No government minister of any political party should have, nor ever should, behave in this way.
In other news tonight, the mother of Rhiannon White says the government must be held accountable for her daughter's death after her killer was jailed for life. Rhiannon was murdered at a train station in Walsall, stabbed 23 times with a screwdriver by Deng Majek, an asylum seeker. Majek has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 29 years. Speaking to GB News this morning, Siobhan White said her family will now campaign in Rhiannon's name, supporting other families and pushing for stronger protections for women and girls. And a warning, this next clip does contain some distressing details.
There was absolutely no reason at all. No reason. As you've seen from the CCTV links, he literally just watched her for hours. There was no reason. They'd never even crossed words. We have sat quiet for 15 months for Rhiannon's sake, because I wanted justice. We're not a family that are going to go and kick off. What's the point? Because Rhiannon's not the first case, and sadly she won't be the last. But we were handed a life sentence today. I had to watch my daughter die.
Well, in response, the Home Office has released a statement saying this vile criminal is now behind bars where he belongs and has rightly received the strictest punishment, a life sentence. It goes on to say in that statement that the Home Office shares public anger over what it calls a broken asylum system, insisting it is taking action to keep dangerous offenders out of the country and to close asylum hotels. Resident doctors in England have voted to continue industrial action for another 6 months, keeping pressure on the government over pay and conditions. The BMA says 93.4% of those who voted backed further strikes. But worth noting, turnout was just over 52%, meaning roughly a third of all resident doctors actively supported action. The government says doctors have already had a nearly 29% pay rise over 3 years and insists talks are ongoing with the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, as he says he wants to avoid a disruption in 2026. Well, the BMA says strikes are not inevitable, but warns patience is running out. And the Met Office has warned that further heavy rain could worsen flooding across parts of the southwest just days after Storm Chandra battered the region. A yellow rain warning is now in force for Cornwall, Devon, Dorset and Somerset, where the ground is already saturated. Forecasters say there's a risk to homes and property, with surface water and river flooding possible if downpours persist. The latest alert follows a month of relentless weather with storms, snow and heavy rain causing disruption across much of the UK throughout the last month. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in an hour.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. Lord Mandelson, one of the main architects of New Labour, the man who never seems far from political scandals, has found himself mired in such a swamp that even he couldn't spin his way out of it. After surviving cash for access rows, lobbying controversies, questionable associations and guacamole embarrassments, Lord Mandelson has resigned from the Labour Party following the latest release of the Epstein files. The files reveal that he received more than £50,000 from the disgraced paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Lord Mandelson says he doesn't recall the payments and expressed regret. But Lord Mandelson isn't an aberration. He is New Labour personified, obsessed with presentation, reputation management, and the assumption that if you use words to mean what you want, Humpty Dumpty words, the substance can be elided. Because while Lord Mandelson has finally accepted his fate, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer's judgment must still be under scrutiny. He appointed Lord Mandelson as the British ambassador to the United States after winning the general election in 2024, with limited vetting and in spite of Mandelson's penchant for scandal. He used Mandelson to sell his dreadful Chagos deal to Donald Trump. Mandelson and Chagos are intimately linked, and to other Republicans in Washington. This was the Mandelson expertise, to be able to sell the worst deal, to spin it as if it were gold, rather like a failed Rumpelstiltskin. In September 2025, when emails between Lord Mandelson and Epstein were revealed, showing a close friendship between the two men, the Prime Minister told the House of Commons this.
The relationship between the US and the UK is one of our foremost relationships, and I have confidence in the ambassador in the role that he is doing.
Days later, he fired Lord Mandelson after immense political and public pressure. But it wasn't what he wanted to do, was it? He left Britain then with an interim ambassador. Mandelson last night resigned from the Labour Party, and today the government says he should be removed from the House of Lords.
Peter Mandelson must account for his actions and conduct. It is an understatement to say that his decision to continue a close relationship with a convicted paedophile, including discussing private government business, falls far below the standards expected of any minister. His behaviour was unequivocally wrong and an insult to the women and girls who suffered. No government minister of any political party should have, nor ever should, behave in this way.
Well, I think the one thing the Minister got right is to say it's an insult to the women and girls involved. But it is the culmination of the rot at the heart of New Labour's ideology. In the 90s, Tony Blair's Labour shifted its focus to spin, PR and optics with little regard for truth or respect for the British people. Today, Sir Keir suggested Angela Rayner may make a return to frontline politics after resigning as Deputy Prime Minister over tax discrepancies on her third home. Rayner says she made an honest mistake and there's no suggestion of criminality, but her tax affairs remain unresolved, untransparent and not properly disclosed. Yet she may soon be back on the front bench. This is sheer arrogance. It's exactly the same type of arrogance that allowed Mandelson to return after so many scandals. What we, your masters, do wrong ought not to worry you, the little people. It is the model of socialism. Do as I say, not as I do. It is contemptuous to the British people and to taxpayers. It is contemptuous to voters who were promised change from elitist politics. The failed Chagos deal, which was sold to Washington by Mandelson, is falling apart as part of this, as Trump realises what a bad idea it was in the first place. Mandelson's downfall is the legacy, the culmination, the ultimate conclusion of New Labour. Let me know what you think, mailmog@gbnews.com. Well, I'm joined now by my panel, Sir John Redwood and Stephen Pound. Stephen, you're more old Labour than New Labour. You never had a great relationship with New Labour, and Tony Blair and you, I don't think, ever.
I was old New Labour.
Oh, you were old New Labour. You must be pretty depressed by where your party was led.
There's a couple of things that really depressed me about this, Sir Jacob. Firstly, and this may come as a surprise to some people, Peter Mandelson was an incredibly effective minister in Northern Ireland. His idea to give the RUC the George Cross, which had previously been awarded to the island of Malta, went down very well indeed, and he was very, very clever. However, I think he was kind of overcome by his own image, and as he said the other day, he flew too close to the sun. It's profoundly embarrassing, but can I just address your point about spin back in the day? Peter Mandelson was known as the third man, if you remember Blair, Brown and Mandelson. There's been no less spun and more unspun politician in the history of this country than Gordon Brown. I mean, you couldn't spin Brown if you put him on a turntable. You know, so I'm sorry, Gordon Brown was the most unspun politician. But Mandelson, back in 95, 96, it was a stroke of genius. I remember being in Millbank, and there was some attack on us, and he said, "Get me a bishop straight away." And we got a bishop on the phone to refute this. He was very, very clever. But the reality is, and I think...
Clever but not honest. And that's degraded British politics.
I wish I could argue with you.
OK, I better bring John in, because the sad thing is, and when I say this on other forms of social media, people don't like it, but most politicians try their best to be honest. Mandelson has poisoned the well for New Labour, but in a way for all of us.
Yes, it's very damaging indeed. And he really messed up our relationship with the United States of America, because President Trump wanted to keep our perfectly good, competent ambassador. Mandelson came in and they threw her out in order to put Mandelson in. They had to smooth talk the president that this man was straight and good and was just what he wanted. The last thing President Trump wanted was somebody too close to Epstein, because he is rightly saying he's had nothing improper to do with Epstein, doesn't want somebody there dragging Epstein into the Oval Office. And then, as you rightly say, Chagos was one of the main things that Mandelson obviously had to lead on to persuade the president to go for this really bad deal. And it looks as if Mandelson didn't explain that deal properly to him. The president still thinks that we're getting money for it rather than having to pay a lot of money. And the president clearly hadn't been alerted to the very sensitive issues about the nuclear capability of the base and Mauritius being anti-nuclear. So he let us down very badly over Chagos, and that is really messing up the American relationship.
And this reflects badly on Starmer, who, in spite of the scandals around Mandelson before, failed to do proper vetting and was determined to appoint him. It's a question of prime ministerial judgment.
Well, absolutely. I can't understand what got into his mind, because everybody knew that there were all sorts of problems with Mandelson. He'd twice been removed by his friends, who were Prime Minister at the time. And then everybody knew he had a link with Epstein. And really, I mean, you don't just say one question to somebody like that and say, was anything wrong? No, nothing was wrong. I mean, you've got to look into it, because it's really derailed the government.
I think we may possibly need to be a bit cautious, because there's a possibility of criminal action here. If this was commercially sensitive information that was given to another person, that is a criminal.
But it's not sub judice yet, so at the moment we're completely free to talk about it, yes. If it were, yes.
But let's just get back to Chagos. I mean, don't forget, Chagos originally was, was Harold Wilson giving Lyndon Johnson an excuse not to commit British troops into Vietnam, and it made a lot of sense. But the reality is the Chagosians are the key people there. They're living in a slum in Port Louis in Mauritius at the present time, the most appalling conditions. Most of them are over here in Crawley, and they think they probably want to stay there. We can talk about that. But let's not forget that President Trump was massively in favour of returning Chagos to Mauritius, who were the
No, he was told by Mandelson and others
whether he was or not
was a good deal for America, because they said, don't worry, we'll take care of it. The legals are strong and we will pay the money. So why wouldn't Trump say OK? But that was only half the story.
So you don't believe everything you're told?
But he didn't explain the risks about the nuclear defence, the risks to the local environment.
That's slightly derogatory to President Trump to imply that he knows nothing except what he's told.
No, because President's so busy, and he thought that Mandelson was, as the British ambassador, somebody he could trust. So a dishonest ambassador sold a dodgy deal to the President of the United States, which is very bad for Britain.
I think the agent behind the Chagos, it was Lord Hermer. I don't think there's much question about that.
Yeah, but it was Mandelson in the room, and we know from what President Trump has said, he wasn't given a proper understanding of the transaction.
When this was promulgated,
and they
it was
didn't
the previous
even know about the treaty obligations. We have a treaty obligation to hold the freehold for America, and they didn't even explain that.
Well, how do we know that we don't?
Well, because it would have come out. And they didn't explain
that's a big if.
They didn't explain it to us either. We had to discover it.
But, Stephen, in our last bit on this, how badly do you think this damages the reputation both of Starmer and of Tony Blair?
I don't think it damages the reputation of Tony Blair particularly. I think
but
Tony
they were
Blair,
so close.
Yeah, they were indeed. But as I said, so was Gordon Brown, so was many other people, Jack Straw, and lots of other people. I think it damages the reputation of the Labour Party. And it gives me no pleasure whatever to say that, because some of the barbs that you were thrusting at us a few moments ago will stick and will hurt, and we will bleed from them. But it makes the task of actually trying to recover that faith and get the faith back for the British people all the more important.
But Gordon Brown thinks there needs to be a high-level serious inquiry into some of those emails, and you're right that we don't want to go into the detail of them. But if the former Prime Minister thinks they were possibly very dangerous...
Isn't it marvellous that there are some sea-green incorruptibles in Labour? I don't think anyone could accuse Gordon Brown of being anything other than utterly
No, he's saying the right thing now, but it's very important...
Well, he always did, John, he always did.
A former Prime Minister, even when it wasn't Mandelson, thinks this has to be inquired into.
But Brown rehabilitated an already multiply disgraced Mandelson when he brought him in.
But that was just the first time.
That was about the third time he was brought back.
Well, I think the Hinduja affair was...
The Hindujas, the loan... You know, all of that was out in the public domain before Brown brought him back. So everybody seems to be taken in by the Mandelson magic, the Mandelson charisma.
But haven't you just put your finger on it? This man did have a certain amount of magic. Maybe he was a snake oil salesman, I don't know. All I can say, the closest I was to him in Northern Ireland, I saw a consummate politician, a man who could play the public like a pianist. He was brilliant at that. However, as we now know, he was maybe a whited sepulchre.
Well, perhaps it's an opportunity to bring back the ancient process of impeachment, because I think that might solve all
dragged
this.
to the bar of the House, possibly.
Well, impeachment is a proper legal process. Anyway, on his relationship with Epstein and leaked emails, Lord Mandelson previously told the BBC, "I relied on assurances of his innocence that turned out later to be horrendously false." His lawyers claim that it was a shakedown of him, a criminal conspiracy. "I foolishly relied on their word, which I regret to this day." Well, I think he regrets it even more this day. Anyway, in a moment...
By investing in our NHS, hospital waiting lists have fallen.
It's been revealed that in a drive to save the NHS, ministers are paying hospitals £3 million a month to remove patients from waiting lists to appear as if the lists are shrinking. Do today's revelations show that Mandelson's new Labour-style spin is still the order of the day? And why has the Italian Prime Minister mysteriously, miraculously almost, appeared?
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
United legend Remy Moses and
Yes.
an imposter.
Famously played for United back in the early 80s, having had a really successful spell at West Bromwich Albion, retired at the age of 28, of course, played for England. Now, you were telling me this morning you'd noticed the story, Anne, didn't you, in the Mail, and I checked it out myself.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned Remy Moses, I thought, well, what's she talking about Remy Moses for? I thought, well, he died weeks ago.
Yeah, except
And I
that
thought,
he didn't.
He didn't. So a bloke called Kenneth Sim was masquerading as Remy Moses in the island of Zante. And he had been assuming this alias for many, many years. Kenneth Sim has turned out to be, he died just a few weeks ago, but he turned out to be a retired mortgage advisor from Hemel Hempstead, I think.
Now, the entire island...
Marketing executive, sorry.
Yeah, the entire island, including his wife,
Yeah.
believed he was Remy
It
Moses.
was on his third wife.
He almost believed it.
So he died and they believed then that Remy Moses
Has died, yes, yes. And when
They
they
even gave him a really big, glamorous, no, I don't mean that, a sort of celebrity almost funeral.
Wow.
And he wore the Man United
They
kit when he
believed
was
they were
training.
burying the legendary footballer Remy Moses.
Yes, and he was
story.
revered on the island as well. I mean, he did a lot of good work. He coached women's football teams and he was involved in lots of different clubs. He didn't take any money for it. He could be seen wearing the United all the clothing, all the training kit and everything.
But when they did the funeral, they couldn't understand why there was nobody there from Manchester United.
They contacted
thought
the club.
that he's one of their legendary figures.
Yeah.
Why did nobody come? So they contacted the club.
And they said, well, he's very much alive and well. And his brother said the furthest he goes is into Manchester to play snooker.
Yeah. So this man had convinced everybody he was Remy Moses for many, many years. Like I say, even his wife thought she was burying.
Wow.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
It's been revealed that ministers are paying NHS hospitals around £3 million a month to remove patients from waiting lists in an attempt to make the healthcare backlog look like it's improving when it's not. The Times reports in November, 346,300 were removed from NHS waiting lists, 82,000 more than the month before, which accounted for almost the entire claimed drop in the waiting lists. Last month, the Prime Minister praised a fall of more than 86,000 as proof the NHS was turning a corner. All right, that didn't sound very much like Sir Keir Starmer, did it? I think there's some problem with the video. Perhaps you've had enough of him today. But new analysis suggests that that drop was driven almost entirely by validation exercises, despite fewer operations being carried out. So is Labour fixing the NHS or simply fixing the numbers? Well, I'm joined now by the health commentator and writer, Roy Lilly. Roy, thank you very much for joining me. What does validation really mean? What is the process and how does it work?
Well, it's a good evening. It's a really laborious process. You have to go through the waiting list effectively line by line. You start with the oldest and work towards the newest, and you see if who's still waiting. Are they dead? Have they gone private? Have they got better because some illnesses are self-limiting and get better? Have they got fed up and gone elsewhere? Have they moved? And so you have to wade through it. Then you have to check clinically where they are and their condition. And so it's a very laborious thing. All hospitals do it. I mean, we used to do it sort of once every 6 months, something like that, because effectively the system takes care of itself. If you write to someone and they don't write back, or you write to someone, they say, well, I've gone private, then you know you haven't got to be bothered with them. But what is happening here is the waiting lists really aren't coming down. We're adding nearly as many people onto the waiting lists as we're getting off the waiting lists. There's a tiny bit of headroom. And so this is a good way, and they're paying the hospitals to do it because it is so laborious. You have to, the bookings administration people don't have enough staff to do it. So they get agency staff in to plough through it and do it manually. It involves a lot of phone calls and fiddling about. What is really happening here is they can't bring the numbers down, and they won't. And I'll explain why. The NHS is targeted on 92% of people through the system in 18 weeks. To do that, waiting lists have got to be about 3.5 million. You can get that number of people rotating through the system, and it works. Now, we've got 7.5 million people on waiting lists, so there's 4 million above the 3. So in order to, we've got to get back to getting the 3.5 million through the system, and then on top of that, you've got to get the 4 million through the system by the time of the next election, which is like, give a damn, about 2 and a bit years. And so can we do an extra 2 million a year on top of the 3.5 million to bring the waiting list down? The answer to that is no. There isn't the capacity in the system, and it can't be done.
And the validation, therefore, in and of itself is a perfectly sensible thing to do. It's worth taking dead people off the waiting lists, and then those appointments are made available. But it's also almost a process that becomes inevitable if you've got long waiting lists, because if you've got short waiting lists, people just come in a reasonable amount of time, and they haven't gone private, they haven't recovered, they haven't died, and it makes a much more sensible list. Would that be fair?
Yes, I think it is fair to say that. And there are other fiddles you can do as well. You can present the numbers in a different way. You can disaggregate the lists and say, well, OK, let's have a look at people waiting for hips and people waiting for cataracts. Cataracts are much quicker to do, so you can say, oh, waiting lists for cataracts are coming down. I suspect they're going to do that. There's also regional variations as well, and that's around deprivation and how the sort of the wellness or otherwise of the people who live in the area where the hospital is. Waiting lists are generally longer in those areas. So I mean, there are still we've started with weeding the list, but I think there are a few more fiddles in the pipeline.
And one of the worrying things about the Times report was that actually in one of the months they were looking at the number of operations had gone down, so that the net increase, once you deal with the validation, would actually have been, it would have still been going up rather than down, so getting worse.
Yeah, there's a huge productivity problem. Productivity is better than it was in some instances before COVID, but in some instances it isn't. And the difficulty there, I mean, there are staffing issues, there are experienced staff that are leaving, so you've got a lot of inexperienced staff. You've got a lot of people who present now later with much more serious conditions and are sicker. Older people usually have comorbidities as well. But the NHS is nowhere near sorting out their productivity problem. It isn't just a question of throwing more money at it, and it's not just a question of throwing more staff at it. It's a question of flow through the system. The NHS is like a big production line, really. Sick and poorly people go in one end, and fixed up people hopefully come out the other.
Well, we all hope for that. Roy, thank you very much for joining me. And NHS productivity is something we've talked about on this programme before. Italian authorities are investigating a mysterious makeover inside one of Rome's oldest churches. An angel has been restored, and the faithful say it looks rather familiar. So familiar that lefty politicians are moaning and tourists are lining up to stare, because the angel hovering over the altar, maybe by divine inspiration, seems to be the face of Italy's Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni. But just think how cross the Pinkos would be if it had looked like the angelic Baroness Thatcher. Now, isn't that a picture to lift your hearts on a cold February day? In a moment.
We must have a welfare system fit for the future, and the current model doesn't work. Need to reform it, and that's what we will do.
Britain is becoming the sick man of the G7, this time on benefits. New data show the UK is set to spend 2.2% of GDP on incapacity welfare by 2030. Is it time the Prime Minister dealt with Britain's welfare culture before the nation is bankrupted by its benefits bill?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
The current unsettled weather is extending to many other areas of Europe as well, particularly parts of Portugal and southern Spain, seeing some very persistent rain at the moment, some localised flooding around here. Showers that are pushing across the continent are also bringing mountain snow over the Alps, but whilst eastern areas of the Mediterranean get a brief respite on Tuesday, we are expecting further thunderstorms and heavy showers to move through here later on in the week, so still rather wet for many.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Rain is returning to southwest England and more wet weather to come across the northeast as well, with some snow mixed in here. Most places feeling a bit colder tomorrow compared to today. Low pressure systems continue to grow down to the southwest, being blocked from moving by a big area of high pressure. So the weather's kind of stuck in this rut. A further pulse of rain coming into the southwest, where the ground is very, very wet. So extra rain is likely to cause some flooding problems, even though it's not particularly heavy. Staying wet in northeast Scotland as well, and the snow level coming down here. Most places avoiding frost with a lot of cloud and a fairly brisk wind, which will bring a real chill tomorrow. As the air gets colder, that snow coming down to lower levels over eastern Scotland, maybe rain on the coast, but you won't have to come too far to see some snow. The rain easing perhaps in Cornwall, but more wet weather to come for Dorset, Somerset and Devon. Met Office warning remains in place here. That rain extending across Wales, but Northern Ireland, much of Northern England's dry and drab. Some brightness in western Scotland, but the snow warning in place across the northeast. To say that snow coming down increasingly to lower and lower levels. So we may see rain on the coast, but the snow elsewhere could cause some disruption as it builds up through the day, particularly, but not exclusively, on the higher routes. The rain will edge northwards, covering the Midlands, East Anglia by the time we get into the afternoon, and most of Wales. Cold day with that rain over the Midlands and East Anglia, 4 or 5 degrees with that wind continuing to feed in the cloud. And as things turn colder, the wet weather moves northwards. We'll see a bit more snow on Wednesday. Again, mostly over the hills, but some at lower levels possible for a time over northern England and Scotland. Warning in place for Shetland through Wednesday as well. Elsewhere further south, looks a bit brighter across southern parts of England and Wales on Wednesday, and a bit milder here as well, but further north, staying on the chilly side throughout.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain has become the sick man of the G7 because our out-of-control welfare spending. New forecasts showing capacity and disability benefits could account for 2.2% of GDP by the end of the decade, higher than any other major economy. The Prime Minister promised to tackle the problem, but he has been repeatedly hindered by the hard left of his party. So as Britain descends further into a culture that rewards shirkers over workers, will the Prime Minister finally confront his party or allow Britain's benefits bill to spiral until the nation is bankrupt? Well, my panel is with me, John Redwood and Stephen Pound. John, I think I saw at the weekend that 6.5 million people would be better off on benefits than working. This is a disaster for the economy, isn't it?
Oh, completely. And it's writing off a lot of younger people, which worries me a great deal, because they're being given effectively a sick note for life because they've got moderate mental health conditions that aren't going to be put right by spending a life not working, but might actually be helped with proper support and therapy and getting a job. Very often what they need is more social engagement and more activity. So I think social policy urges the Prime Minister to do something about this, as well as economic policy. But we have far too many people not willing or not able to work or promised more money by not working. And there's been a recent study which shows it's not just the benefits, it's also that they get lots of other things as a result of being on benefit, so that it's much more worthwhile for some of them than taking a lower paid job and working their way up.
Isn't this a real problem, that your former colleagues in the House of Commons won't allow Starmer to do what actually he would like to do, and he's also essential for the country?
Well, watch this space, because Wes Streeting is actually addressing this issue head on. You know, he's grasping the nettle. But interestingly enough, I mean, I remember when I going back to Northern Ireland, I was amazed at the majority of cars, for example, in Northern Ireland, the ones that are actually done on the mobility scheme, the majority, the huge numbers. And people said to me, the three areas of massive, massive sickness and long-term sickness in the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, South Wales and Scotland, post-industrial countries, where it had huge, heavy industry, which is now gone, but it's left a legacy of illness. On this welfare, Germany, actually per capita, has more people on the sick than we do. But Stephen, and their benefits are higher.
I'm sorry to interrupt
it's got to be addressed.
But is this a legacy of illness, or is it a legacy of hiding unemployment as sick benefit?
Well, there was a time, as we all know, a previous Prime Minister who actually preferred to have the sick statistics rather than the unemployment benefit. But the problem we have here is generational. The real difficulty, I mean, I have, we've all been in our surgeries, we had people whose parents and grandparents were actually basically watching daytime television. And a lot of this is to do with the huge increase in minor mental illnesses. Don't forget, nowadays you can get on PIP, but we have an interview over the phone, on Zoom. Now, how can you possibly make an estimate which is costing this country billions on a Zoom call?
But it's cultural that people feel they're entitled to have these benefits. It's very hard to take them away from people who've already got them. And you just have a culture where people don't want to work. And interestingly, there's 6.5 million who work who would be better off on benefits. They culturally want to work. Their self-esteem depends on it.
Well, I think a lot do. And that's why the system is doubly cruel, because it's not letting them or sending the right incentive. But I think we all agree on this for once, that the government needs to review all these benefits and to make sure they go to people who really do need them, because some people can't go to work and they shouldn't be pushed into doing so. But for all those who can go to work, they should have the requirement to look for work, and it should also be very clear that they will be better off after allowing for the extra expenses of work and the loss of some fringe benefits you don't get when you go to work. So they've got to review the whole package. So
Ian Duncan Smith had precisely that idea. But the thing that's exercising the whips in the House of Commons today, certainly on the government side, is special educational needs. Now, this is now absolutely ballooned out of all. 71% of local government expenditure is statutory expenditure, and over half of that is on special education needs and special services for the young and the elderly. And yet, the minute you actually talk about restricting this, people seem to go absolutely doolally about it. So we've absolutely got to we've got to bite the bullet in something which is very difficult for, by and large, I mean, without being silly about it, a lot of, Labour people are actually quite sentimental about things, and we actually like to think we're there to help the weakest. In this particular case, we're not helping the weakest. We're encouraging the weakest, and we're creating weakness. And the sooner we realise that, the better. Maybe I can say this, but I think I actually said it when I was in the House. Didn't make me popular, but it's got to be said.
But old Labour knew this. It was the party for working people. And anybody who could work should work, and it was about promoting job opportunities and making sure there was that gap between.
It's a pride and dignity.
Yes, work is very important for the self-respect of the individuals who are working. But nobody's going to work hard, work 40 hours a week, if it makes them worse off than if they're on benefits. You just create an impossible position for them.
I think there are some people who do. Well, the thing that used to really get my goat about, you have somebody in a house who was on this, and then the next door neighbours would say, well, why should... and it becomes corrosive.
All right, well, I think we've got a right of reply, which I hope is going to appear, because a government spokesman said They're such comedians, you know, and they make Bob Monkhouse look so unfunny. We're fixing the broken welfare system we inherited, including through a package of measures to save nearly £2 billion by the end of the decade out of a budget that's £160 billion. Anyway, changes to universal credit to narrow the gap between what people receive for being unemployed compared to long-term sickness, and the Timms review, which will make sure PIP is fit and fair for the future. Well, that's very reassuring. In a moment.
This is the greatest moment in the modern history of our great nation. Thank you!
How many vowels are there in you? The Brexit benefits continue to flood in as new analysis by GBNews reveals Britain has avoided more than 60,000 pages of EU regulations in the 6 years since we left. Plus, Spain has decreed that it will give 500,000 illegal migrants citizenship who could otherwise come here. Thank goodness for Brexit.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In January 2020, Britain finally left the European Union after 3.5 years of gridlock.
You and all of us have made history, and this is the greatest moment in the modern history of our great nation. Thank you!
To him.
The establishment did everything it could to prevent it, using the courts, the House of Commons and blocking a general election, but eventually democracy prevailed. Ever since, the blob has tried to blame Brexit for everything to find an excuse to take us back into Brussels by stealth. But the facts prove otherwise. Today, GB News has revealed that since January 2020, we have avoided over 600,000 pages of EU regulation, over 112 miles of paperwork, enough to cross the English Channel 6 times, not even in a small boat. Another domestic benefit is being unconstrained by AI rules. And as you will notice, we were talking earlier about angels, and just look what we can create, the angelic form of my two brilliant panellists. Also, more seriously, in Spain, the socialist government has decreed that 500,000 illegal migrants will be granted citizenship, which without Brexit would have been people who would then have had full rights to live and claim benefits in Britain. Well, I'm very pleased to be joined now by the Senior Fellow at the Centre for Fundamental Rights, Jorge González Galarza. Thank you very much for joining me. 500,000 illegal immigrants to be given rights, and that, of course, gives them full freedom of movement across the European Union.
Yes, absolutely, Jacob. And I very much understand how in many other programs, TV programs, night shows like your own across the continent, there's been, increasing worry, concern, what is going on with the over 500,000, people who have all of a sudden turned into legal residents in Spain, who will all of a sudden be able to travel across Schengen and beyond. Many of them, I'm sure, will be making their way to the UK. This has been a tremendous disaster for Spain, and we can get into the reasons of why it was done and what are the consequences going to be for Spain itself. But as you said, I think many other European countries should be taking a close look at the way that the left in all our countries is using migration to rig the census and to rig the country itself.
And this is also a problem because Germany took in, whatever it was, 1 million people from Syria, and you have refugees come in, and that's determined by national politics, but it gives them an international citizenship, which all the other member states just have to go along with. That's a real problem, isn't it? It's causing real strains in the EU, and Hungary is very against all of this, is being fined on a daily basis for refusing to go along with a pan-European migration system. Is this causing problems for the European Union structurally?
Yes, well, what I found very interesting over the past few days, ever since last week, on Tuesday last week, Spain decreed this mass amnesty, was that this very much runs against the EU system itself, the EU Migration and Asylum Pact, which is slated to come into effect rather soon in the next few months, gradually. When you have a system, as you said, in the EU that seeks to manage migration and allocate migrants that come in through asylum, through other channels. And all of a sudden you have a country like Spain that says, hey, look, here's another 500,000. They can all of a sudden move across freely. There's been, there is going to be a lot of fraud, that we know, and we can get into the politics of Spain. I'd love to share some of the details with your audience, but this is indeed a way to stick it to the EU. And our prime minister thinks he is sticking it to Trump, thinks he is sticking it to the far right, to the anti-migrant far right, people like you and I. But really it is, as you said, a very, very complex problem to handle for governments like Denmark, which is a social democratic government, a very tough government when it comes to migration. You mentioned Hungary; they're being fined $1 million a day for having a border and for keeping out illegals. So yes, this really goes to show that the system that we have at the moment just doesn't work for the continent.
And in a word, do you think these 500,000 will leave Spain and go to other countries?
Well, I bet many of them will. I bet many of them will stay. We also have a lavish welfare state that has attracted them here in the first place.
In the first place. All right. I've got to move on to my panel, but thank you so much for joining me and explaining that, because my panel are still with me. John, this is a big benefit, that if immigration policy isn't working now, it's our fault, and we can blame British politicians. We can't say it's a decision by the Spanish Prime Minister.
No, I mean, you're quite right. It could be far worse if we were in Schengen or in the EU, because many more people would have rights. And the tragedy is that politicians did not use the powers, the freedoms we got when we left to make a major reduction in migration from the rest of the world, which we were quite free to do. We did get a reduction in migration from Europe. But there have been many other Brexit benefits. I mean, the biggest one is the money. And we got far more money back than we even claimed during the referendum campaign, and the health service has absorbed a great deal of that. But I think it would probably be 25 billion a year to go back into the EU now, because they would expect more and the economies are a bit bigger. And we can, of course, now keep all our own customs dues coming in, whereas we had to give most of them away. We can keep all our plastics tax. We had to give that away. We can take tariffs off things. We've reduced an awful lot of tariffs or removed all tariffs on things we don't make or grow for ourselves, and these are big wins.
And the scientific advances we can make, I made a joke about AI, but actually that's a very serious point, and gene editing and so on, that we can get better food production because we're outside the EU.
Yes, I mean, many of those pages of regulation would make it more difficult for us to pioneer and innovate and try and keep up with America.
Stephen, the sort of key question seems to me for the Labour people who want a reset is where do they get the money for this? What taxes are they going to propose putting up to pay billions to the EU every year?
Well, I mean, virtually every respectable economist will tell you that there's actually been a big hit to the British economy. And people say in the long term... Well, I'm sorry. In the long term, we could be better off. In the short term...
We outperform France and Germany.
I'm sorry. But look...
They've got no evidence for it. Well, I'd also question whether respectable economist isn't an oxymoron, but never mind.
But look, let's just concentrate on the question we asked. Spain has a huge problem with rural depopulation. Massive problem. We have, in this country, twice, we've done exactly what the Spanish are doing. We've had the thing called the regularisation of overstayers regulations, whereby if you kept your head down for a few years, suddenly we had an amnesty. And this was not Labour, not Conservative, both of those parties have done it. So we've been there. What the Spanish are doing, and they reckon, because they have these two, as you know, these enclaves in North Africa, Ceuta and the other one, so they've got a huge problem with people coming over the border there, but they actually need people over there. So I think we were never in Schengen, and people forget, when you talk about the idea that Spanish people could come to this country, well, people from this country could go to Spain, and I know lots of people who go to Spain and who've worked in Spain would be quite happy to do so. But look, the bottom line is the Spanish have got their rules, we've got our rules, we can respect them, but we don't have to copy them.
Yes, but because we're out of Europe, those 500,000 people have no right to come here, whereas otherwise they would have done.
We were not in Schengen.
Schengen doesn't really matter in this context.
That's the free movement across...
No, it's not. Schengen is the passport-free area. Free movement applied across the whole of the European Union, as you know. So they could have come here. They could have all decided... They get their passport from Spain, they have a Spanish passport, they could have come through and they couldn't have been stopped. People will remember...
They could have come here to work. They wouldn't have been entitled to benefits because they hadn't had the 5 years residency.
They were entitled to benefits.
No, you had to have 5 years residency.
We were sending benefits to the children of people who were living outside the country.
People who'd been here and worked here and paid tax here.
Well, people who'd come here, they then were able to claim benefits. People who were working here were able to get benefits for their children who were living in foreign countries. It was an absolute racket.
Fortunately, it's been stopped, as you probably...
Well, it's stopped because we're no longer members of the European Union. And that's all saving us money. That's John's point. We are saving billions of pounds a year.
But you see, Stephen won't answer the very good question you put of what taxes would we put up, even to pay for the reset? Because it's going to be far more expensive to have a student scheme where thousands of their students come here at our expense than under the scheme we got. And it's going to be very expensive if we try and join this defence racket they've got.
Well, the idea that there's some sort of fiscal harmonisation and that we in this country would increase our taxes to be in line with the rest of Europe.
No, it's not that. It's to pay our subscription. It's to pay our subscription, which we no longer have to pay because we've left.
We were net recipients.
No, we weren't.
We weren't. In 2 of the 4 years that we're talking about here, we actually received more back from the EU than we gave.
No way.
We have never been a net recipient from the EU, as you know. We used to get a rebate, but we were still net contributors.
Right, but
and they decided how to spend the money.
I'm sorry,
it wasn't
factoring
but
the rebate.
there's not going to be any rebate on the reset, and there wouldn't be any rebate.
We don't even know what the reset is. The reset is talking about economic...
We do know some of it. It's going to be a lot dearer for students to start with. It's going to be dearer if we join the defence thing.
I'm sorry.
No, it's big money. They're after our money, Stephen.
That's right.
That's what they want.
Not because they like us, they want our cash.
The defence issue, we no longer have America. NATO, we're on our own now. We're on our own against a couple of...
We're still in NATO, like all the others.
Well, hang on a second. We've got to, in Europe, we've actually got to create our own defence structures.
Stephen, I'm going to have to cut you off because we've got to talk about the Catholic Church, which is always a good thing on which to end, because today marks the Feast of Candlemas, the day in the Christian calendar that remembers the Blessed Virgin Mary and St. Joseph presenting the baby to Jesus at the temple 40 days after Christmas, when, of course, St. Simeon said, "Lord, let us now thy servant depart in peace." And it was the symbolisation of light overcoming darkness. A light shineth in the darkness, and light shineth upon the Gentiles, I seem to remember. So today is the day. If you haven't already taken them down, you can take down your Christmas decorations, Candlemas, the presentation in the temple, the last day of Christmas. A happy Christmas for the last time from me until next December. And now it's over to the one and only Patrick Christie's.
St. Patrick.
St. Patrick. What have you...
warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Evening. Yes, it's time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Rain is returning to southwest England and more wet weather to come across the northeast as well, with some snow mixed in here. Most places feeling a bit colder tomorrow compared to today. Low pressure systems continue to grow down to the southwest, being blocked from moving by a big area of high pressure. So the weather's kind of stuck in this rut. A further pulse of rain coming into the southwest, where the ground is very, very wet. So extra rain is likely to cause some flooding problems, even though it's not particularly heavy. Staying wet in northeast Scotland as well, and the snow level coming down here. Most places avoiding frost with a lot of cloud and a fairly brisk wind, which will bring a real chill tomorrow. As the air gets colder, that snow coming down to lower levels over eastern Scotland, maybe rain on the coast, but you won't have to come too far to see some snow. The rain easing perhaps in Cornwall, but more wet weather to come for Dorset, Somerset and Devon. Met Office warning remains in place here. That rain extending across Wales, but Northern Ireland, much of Northern England's dry and drab. Some brightness in western Scotland, but the snow warning in place across the northeast. To say that snow coming down increasingly to lower and lower levels. So we may see rain on the coast, but the snow elsewhere could cause some disruption as it builds up through the day, particularly, but not exclusively, on the higher routes. The rain will edge northwards, covering the Midlands, East Anglia by the time we get into the afternoon, and most of Wales. Cold day with that rain over the Midlands and East Anglia, 4 or 5 degrees with that wind continuing to feed in the cloud. And as things turn colder, the wet weather moves northwards. We'll see a bit more snow on Wednesday. Again, mostly over the hills, but some at lower levels possible for a time over northern England and Scotland. Warning in place for Shetland through Wednesday as well. Elsewhere further south, looks a bit brighter across southern parts of England and Wales on Wednesday, and a bit milder here as well, but further north, staying on the chilly side throughout.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
This year, the adventure of a lifetime could be on us. Courtesy of Riviera Travel, there's a terrific £10,000 holiday for 2 to be won. Choose from over 30 worldwide destinations like Thailand, South Africa, New Zealand or even Sri Lanka. We'll also boost your bank account with a fabulous £30,000 in tax-free cash.
For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB19 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 27th of February. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from